This is Coconut. She's my dumb and aloof cat, and I love her to bits. But the more I interact with this fuzzy creature, the more I think about what's going on in her little kitty brain. I don't know if it's the constant bombardment of political turmoil going on in the world, or if it's Twitter being even more Twitter-ish than it usually is, but something made me wonder where Coco would place in the commonly used political compass. Now, if you didn't know, the simplest way to describe current politics is with 4 quadrants labeled authoritarian right and left, and libertarian right and left. Right and left are typically a spectrum of how economics should be regulated, and authoritarian and libertarian are usually how much influence a government should have. Now, before the weird kids who lurk on Reddit for 8 hours a day tell me how much I butchered the complexity of politics by categorizing them into 4 quadrants and using simple definitions instead of your doctrine on your superior beliefs, I just want to remind you that I'm trying to figure out the political alignment of my cat, so please do not take any of this too seriously. Alright, let's get started. So my cat typically doesn't mind being pet out of nowhere. Furthermore, she has little regard for my opinion on whether or not I'm okay with her planting her ass on my face while I sleep. Given that cats don't really have a straightforward method of giving or accepting consent other than just not biting you, I'll make a reach and say that certain factors such as consent and harassment aren't at the top of their priority list. Furthermore, she has a tendency to take certain items like hairbands and coins from everywhere in the house and stores them in her little stash. This may be signs of primitive investment methods and could play a possible role in free market trade, but I just don't know if that's her intention for now. Regardless, all that pushes her a bit into classical libertarianism, but there's a bit more to talk about. She never wears clothes. Like, ever. The only piece of clothing that Coco really wears is her collar, which after constant gnawing on it, she made into a makeshift spike collar. This is a clear indicator that she's trying to look like a punk, but at the same time her nudity shows her inner hippie. Obviously this pushes her very libertarian left in terms of appearance, but whether or not she can play the part instead of just looking it is something we still have to see. Next, I want to address something that to this day has me a bit confused. She's dependent on the proletariat, i.e. myself, to feed her, serve her, etc. On the other hand, she doesn't mind eating or sleeping with me at all, implying that she's not necessarily classist or even prejudiced. She doesn't see me as some peasant. I'm practically just some giant hairless cat who feeds her of my own accord and who I enabled to see me as her servant. You can technically argue that we made an unspoken bilateral exchange of goods for a service, in which Coco's case is existing, but once again, it's hard to prove this as there's really no semblance of consent on her part. This means that she's pushed a little further left. And lastly, there's a few more things that I want to mention in order to tilt her political alignment to a more accurate position. She doesn't work, but essentially owes her entire existence to one giant welfare program called pethood. She's pretty keen on her property and will swat me away if I climb her kitty tower or think about pooping in her litter box. However, at the same time, she does not pay any property tax and in fact was undocumented for a time. She's very much treated like royalty but doesn't understand the concept of a caste system, nor does she exploit me for more treats, as I can easily stop if I feel like she's getting too fat. Finally, any personal furniture that I own, such as my computer table or sofa, are seized by her and, for lack of better terms, shared as a form of public ownership. Again, this is only counteracted by the fact that for the most part she holds no real power and usually just whines if I get her off something. Alright, that should be enough to see where my cat is politically aligned. And according to the info we have, we see that Coconut is, for the most part, a libertarian socialist. This makes sense for her, as she's anti-authoritarian, believes in the free association of producers, has no concept of interspecies conflict or classist doctrine, and survives on her elongated welfare with no actual authority other than a voluntary one-sided agreement to sustain it. Oh Coco, you liberal punk, you. Thanks for watching, and I hope you enjoyed the video. If you liked it, then consider subscribing for more ridiculous content like this. Until next time, I'll see you in the next video.